It's time to go to Canada and get a demonstration for this evening. And thank you
Oh,
folks for
yeah.
being involved in this worldwide uh, safety program tonight. It was really good. And I like getting the feedback from the other members who have experiences or have tried this or tried that or going to poo-poo the idea of I can go to Home Depot and buy one of the little ones you use for weeding your grass. Uh, think about the need and the protection. Then you won't go back to Home Depot again. All right, let's go to Canada. Kade Bolger is with us tonight. As he's known around his house, Daddy. Daddy, what's on tap for us tonight? That's you.
Yeah, I was just making sure my headset was correct. I was just testing it off on mute so I wouldn't interrupt you talking. I didn't want to leave it on the whole meeting so it wouldn't die halfway through, depending how long I go or whatnot. I mean, it won't go that long. So,
how's our favorite miniature woodturner doing tonight?
He's doing good. Yeah, he's doing great. He's getting big. He's the youngest in daycare, but the biggest. But he's a tank. He's probably 3 feet tall now, and he's 35 pounds. So, and he's only 21 months, so he'll be 2 in July. But yeah, he's doing great. He speaks both English and French, so it's cute. So yeah.
Good. All right.
He'll be turning in no time. Just don't tell my wife.
All right, we're going to mute the entire group right now. And Kade, after I do this, then you can come back. And I got to get the button. I just muted everybody. Kade's going to be back. Folks, if you want to ask a question or make a comment, please do so by unmuting yourself. We will do a Q&A following the demonstration. Please keep in mind that this is Kade's demonstration of his technique of what we're doing tonight. Please allow the demonstrator to show his process and his techniques, and then we can all have a little chat about it. Until then, we're going to go to the best wood turner that I can find in Toronto. Oh, it's him. Kade, good evening.
Thanks, Eddie. Thanks, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hope all is well. So yeah, 'tis the season. Easter is around the corner. Eggs are great to make. They're fun projects. They're great skill builders. They're great to make for grandkids, nieces, nephews, kids. We do Easter egg hunts, and of course we hide the chocolate, right? But I always do a few eggs and tie-dye them or color them differently, and they can find those. And then when they find them, I actually wood burn their names on them. So over the years, they collect tie-dyed wooden Easter eggs. And very often I do a different species each year, so they get multicolored. So they're fun, great skill builders. They're great sellers at craft fairs, craft shows, but one thing you can do with them is they make great centerpieces. So sometimes if you have a very plain bowl, which is just a shape, a curve, it's not very overly dramatic or doesn't have much character in it, you can spice it up by making a centerpiece out of having some eggs in the bowl. And some people do this just to set off or make a centerpiece on their table with eggs or a basket. Use different species, different woods, different colors to make the color contrast you desire. And they're fun to make. Another thing on top of that is, have you ever heard of worry stones? Some people like eggs and they just keep them in their pocket. And when they're anxious or have anxiety or uneasy about a certain situation, they'll hold it in their hand and just rub it like a worry stone, which is comforting for some people. Other people collect them. They can be a collectible. People collect multiple eggs in multiple species or multiple eggs in multiple species of egg-bearing animals. So birds, reptiles, and so forth, different sizes, different woods, okay? So I'll show a few of my Easter eggs while I'm here, just to show examples. So these I've made a while ago. They're just in my inventory. I make these for galleries, shops, craft shows, art shows. They're inexpensive. They're quick impulse buys to shut the kid up, or adults buy them. But at that time, the parents are in the booth shopping for themselves. And I don't know if you noticed, I guess I'm part of the Band-Aid brigade this week. So I'm joining the brigade, Brenda. This happened today. I had a little piece of wood on here. This is a brand new spur drive I got. And I went and I flicked it off like this. And this is razor sharp. And I cut my thumb from here to here with my spur drive. So it's okay. I have a good box. Always have a box of Band-Aids in your shop. And I recommend this. I get it at the pharmacy. And it comes in a multi-variety pack. There's many in there. I also have alcohol swabs, so I can clean it before I Band-Aid it. So it's handy to have that little safety kit within your shop as well. So they were readily available, handy, quick to clean, quick to apply, and I was back off to my production for the day. So So these are a couple I did. This one is white oak, and I dyed it red. This one is walnut. This one is ash, which is not dyed. And then sometimes I tie-dye them or I color them. Other times I leave them natural. So like this, you can make a centerpiece out of it, liven up a live edge bowl or something for a centerpiece. So again, this one's red oak. This one is ash that was tie-dyed. And I will also show this technique in this demonstration. So I'll turn a couple eggs. I'm gonna turn 2, maybe 3 if we have time. I'm relatively quick at them because I've made thousands of these. So we'll do one with the skew, one with the spindle gouge, and one with a roll of the dice, okay? So this is ash tie-dyed. This one is ash with some olive in it, and it's just dyed yellow to accentuate the grain and the character within the wood. And then this one is white oak. Actually, no, this is red oak, and I did a green and yellow tie-dye. Now, these ones I already had in my inventory, and the bowl that it's sitting in is a crabapple live edge bowl turned to 1/8 of an inch wall thickness. And I just had these sitting in here to show you that you can sort of make centerpieces with different types of bowls or different eggs. Now, they don't have to be chicken eggs. I've made quail eggs, pheasant eggs, hummingbird eggs, goose eggs, snake eggs. So this is a Canadian goose egg. And when I make my eggs, I'm very precise on my measurements. So this is anatomically, biologically correct to the size of a goose egg. This was made out of tulip poplar. I did bleach it, but I didn't use a wood bleach. I used white chestnut spirit stains, okay? Now, you can put them in bowls. They look great, but you can also put them on a pedestal. I remember back in the day, my grandma always had a pedestal made out of a semi-precious stone with a semi-precious stone egg on top. And that's really what led me to make these with a pedestal. So I make them with color contrasting woods, a base with an egg. And again, they're good artistic pieces that are fun to make, but also good sellers and fairly inexpensive. So, all right, let's get started. Oh, well, I'll show you the 2 I did today. So I did these this morning. This one is out of white oak. I did this one with my spindle gouge. And this one is out of ash. And I did this one with the skew. And this is what we're going to do with one of them today. We'll do a tie-dye effect. Okay. So those are the two I turned this morning. Okay. So, all right, let's get started. So, like we've all been saying, safety is mandatory and safety is all our own responsibility. So take the proper safety precautions you see fit to protect your face, your safety, your hands, your fingers. But it is a good idea to remove all your jewelry so there's nothing that can pull you into the lathe. Wear a face shield. You might, or at least minimum safety glasses. Protect your eyes. You only get 2 pairs. But I do recommend a face shield because I couldn't imagine a piece of wood coming off and I couldn't imagine the dental bill. You know what I mean? So you might not think you're pretty, but your loved ones do. So protect that little pretty face of yours. Long sleeves, I like rolled up or short sleeves. I wear earplugs because wood turners often go deaf. So I have a custom pair of earplugs molded to my ear canals. These are so comfortable when I go hunting or fishing with the boys or even couples. There is always that one person that snores like a banshee and just keeps the whole cabin awake. So I can bring these comfortably, put them in, and I can sleep with them. They're so comfortable, I can sleep with them. And I wear them Monday to Friday, 9 to 3 when I'm turning full-time in my shop or my studio. Now a pair of these, 75 an ear or 150 for the pair, significantly less expensive than one hearing aid. And last but not least, I don't recommend turning in sandals or flip-flops because, I mean, this is a fairly small piece of wood, but if it fell from your bedway, it could do some damage to those tiny bones in your feet, okay? But more importantly, if you're one of those wood turners that like to rest your tools on your bedway, they shake, rattle, and roll, they always land point down, and that could do damage to your feet. So I recommend closed-toed shoes. Anything over 10 pounds, I recommend steel-toe shoes. So that's it about safety. And I just want to say we're all responsible for our own safety. So protect yourself. Yeah. One egg I forgot to show was this one. I have cats and I have snakes. I breed pythons. So this here is a python egg. This is what a python egg looks like. Okay. They usually lay about 6 to 12 in a clutch, and then about 50 to 65 days later, these snakes hatch out of these eggs. So you can make bird eggs, reptile eggs, many eggs. Once you go down that rabbit hole, there's no shortage of eggs to turn. So they're fun, good skill builders. All right, when I prepare my materials, just going to take a sip of my coffee here. I prepare my materials to 3.5 inches in length, 2 inches by 2 inch square. Okay, I go to the rough cut lumber. I dimension my wood on my bandsaw or my table saw, and then I cut them to these dimensions. Now, the anatomically correct size of an egg, the length is 62 millimeters in length, which is in inches 2.5 inches. Okay, the diameter of a large hen egg is 43 millimeters, and in inches that is 1 11/16. Okay, now you don't need to be hung up on dimensions and numbers. The crucial point is getting the proportions and the shapes correct so it looks like an egg. But I mean, variation, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So if it's slightly off or cone shaped, or it doesn't matter. People like them and they'll scoop them up like hotcakes. Okay. So the reason I do that is I have a 1/2 inch on either side for waste, and that accounts for my live center pin and my spur drive pin. And it also gives me enough room that I can get up and around that egg with not hitting my drive spur or my live center, damaging my tools or my lathe, okay? So that's the reasoning why I make them 3.5 inches in length, okay? So I have 2 pieces of wood here. This one is white oak. This one is ash. So the ash one I'll do with the skew and we'll tie dye. The red oak one I will do with the spindle gouge. Okay. Now, of course, first thing we did was we found our centers. I take an awl and I mark a center point. It's not crucial on something small, but as that distance gets greater, it can be a balancing act to keep that in the center while I try and bring up the other center. So by making that pinhole with an awl, it stays in that hole. I can bring this up and it's perfectly centered every time, okay? Tighten down your tailstock. I'll move these quickly. When we tighten when we plunge out our quill, we want to make sure that our live center cup is up against that wood. It gives it ample pressure to go into that spur drive, to drive it safely and efficiently, but more importantly, keep it on the lathe and not flying through the air. Then we set up our tool rest. Always spin the piece of wood. That way you're not going to start the lathe. This hits the tool rest and could potentially come airborne. Okay. There we are. That's good there. Any questions so far? No? All right. If there are any questions, feel free to type them in the chat and then either Eddie or Dane can relay them for you. I find it's a little easier than everybody unmute once, which can delay the demonstration quite significantly, okay? All right, so I'm putting my earplugs in. I can still hear you. I can still hear a muffled voice if you ask questions. And I'm gonna put my face shield on, even though it is a small project. I'm turning these at 2000 RPMs. So if it came off the lathe, it could do some damage to different parts of your face or your neck. So face shields are a good idea, okay, no matter what you're turning. There we are. Everyone can hear me still? I just sound like Darth Vader. All right. So my tool rest is below center. So I'm cutting it at center of the spindle. My grain is running parallel to the bedway. So it's a spindle turning. In order to cut downhill, I always cut from the high side to the low side. Okay. So first of all, I'm going to turn this round. Now, if I am going to check to see if this round, it's not a good idea to put your fingers there because you can jam them. So I stick the tool on top, and if it's riding nicely, it's round. So we're good. Okay. Now, I want to make this to the dimension, the diameter of the egg. Okay. So, and in production turning, we don't always want to keep shutting our lathe down. So I set the diameter with these calipers. And I set my diameter with my parting tool, okay? So I will show this on this camera. The next egg I do, I will show on the other camera. Okay, so I actually hold this like this with one hand to support this with one hand from any vibration or catch. I hold this on the back of the wood to get down to my dimensions, okay? Now, one thing you want to do is when you buy these corners will be sharp. You want to round them and sand them to make sure they're not going to catch the wood. Because if it catches the wood, it's going to throw this in this direction back at you, okay? So we round those corners. So it rides on the wood without catching the wood, okay? And I just need to go down to my dimension. So I enter, I'm holding this at the back. I don't want to go too deep because I don't want this to bind in the wood. So I make a relief cut and now I'm able to move freely without catching the wood, binding the wood, heating up the tool, expanding the wood, giving me a catch, okay? Once this falls into place, I'm at my diameter for my egg. So now I go back to my spindle roughing gouge and I bring this down to that diameter. I have the tool turned so I don't catch that corner on this opposing end grain. There we are. Now I am at my diameter of my egg. Okay. I'm actually going to put this underneath here so it's a little easier to see. Now what I do is I have a 1/2 inch on either side, which is going to be scrap wood, okay? Now it's okay to move your tool rest, but I recommend shutting your lathe off first. Also on my calipers, I have a little mark here, which is my 43 millimeter and my 62 millimeter. So the diameter of the egg, the length of the egg. Diameter, and I'm bang on right there, okay? Here I have, actually I want this one here. Here I have my 1/2 inch on one side and 1/2 inch on the other side, okay? So this is scrap, this is my egg. So what I do to get that wood out of my way is I use my parting tool to remove the bulk of the material, getting down to the length of my egg fairly quickly. Okay. There we are. Around this slightly like a skew. Now, just like many things, we use a golden rule or the golden ratio for an egg. An egg has a 1/3, 2/3 to the overall dimensions. So the highest point of the top curve here is your separation between your 1/3 and your 2/3, okay? we have a different curve here than we do here and a slight taper to the top of the egg, okay? So first thing I do is I mark my 1/3, 2/3, and I just eyeball it. It's about there, okay? You can mark it. You don't necessarily have to mark it, but in the beginning, it's good to have a visual aid, okay? Now my spindle gouge. This is my spindle gouge. It has a very high swept back edge on it, so I can do a lot of detail and fine cuts. And I just start to take that corner off as I come around this corner, working my way back to that edge. One more pass just to take out this hill. Okay. And then I create my taper. Now this is where people go wrong. They take too much off there and it becomes more of a conical egg, which I mean isn't a big deal. It's just not a perfect chicken egg. We are starting to take shape. Now I just need to clean up any edges or tool marks within the center. I can blend this. Up and around this curve, just like so. Blend this. Up and around into that curve. And now we have our shape of our egg, okay? I would then remove my tool rest, slow my lathe down. I hit the button before I move my tool rest. Grab my sandpaper. I would quickly sand this. Now with the spindle gouge, I find I'll have a little bit more sanding than with a skew. When I'm sanding, I would be wearing a respirator and I would have my dust collection on. Dust and lungs don't mix well, so protect your lungs. There we are, and that's all the sanding we need. Here we can see the finish off the tool with minimal sanding, okay? Now I just need to reduce these to a small pin and then part it off the lathe. Now there are jigs, there are different means of holding this, so you can do that. But in a production style theme, the more I fiddle around with jigs and taking stuff off and putting it back on and securing it different ways, you lose time, which in turn, you lose a larger hourly wage, okay? So I turn this down to a tiny pin, which is a 1/16 of an inch little peg that will be holding this on the lathe. Now, if you do it this way, go down to a pin, the diameter that you feel comfortable turning down to. You might not feel comfortable going down to a 1/16 of an inch, so go to an 1/8, okay? You can always use a saw, cut it off, and sand it to blend the top curve, okay? So here I'm gonna start removing this. And then I blend my curve around here. I don't want to remove too much before I start to remove some of this. Okay. So I go back and forth. Down to here, come back, little bit more. Okay, now I'm maybe 3/16. Come back here. Now these need to be all bevel rubbing slicing cuts, otherwise these pins will break, sending that egg through the air. Okay, now ideally you want to remove your tool rest before you sand because you don't want to get caught in between the two. Okay, but on this, rather than shut my lathe down on and off, I can sand behind the lathe here safely and just blend that curve, blend this curve, and that's sufficient sanding. Now I reduce this pin to a 16th, this pin to a 16th. Make a small indent there where it's going to break free. And here I come in here. Come back, shape this edge. There we are. Make a little indent there where it's going to break free. And my egg is done. Now, there's different ways you can sand this. Okay. Now, when I break this off, I want to break it across the grain, not with the grain. And it will break above the surface, okay, leaving you that little pin on top and that little pin on the bottom, okay? And that's the finish off the tool with minimal sanding. I started and stopped at 240. Now with this, if I was doing these in a production run, I would get them to this point, throw them in a box. And then I would mount a sander or a disc sander on my lathe, and I would just blend that really quickly in batches. So by batching them and doing it this way, throwing them in a box, and then when I'm done for the day, I sand all the nibs off. Again, you save more time, you get a bigger hourly rate. But if I do them one by one, I would just hand sand that because this tiny little 16th of an inch pin will sand off relatively quickly, okay? Very quickly. I go with the grain, across the grain, with the grain, across the grain, with the grain, across the grain. I have it sort of cupped, curved. So it follows the curve of the top of the egg as I am sanding with the grain and across the grain, okay? My final step of sanding is always with the grain. And there I have
Hey, Kade, would
the
it
top of
speed
my
things?
egg finished.
Hey, Kade,
Yes.
would it speed things up any if you like took off those nubs with the Dremel or with the skew or something?
Well, you could carve them off, yeah. Dremel would be pretty aggressive, and if you skip or skate away, you're going to ruin the whole side and the finish of your egg. So, I mean, either way, you could take out a jackknife, carve those nibs off and sand them, but I find it's no much quicker, really, because it's so small, it sands off just as fast, especially if I use a disc on the lathe.
Thank you.
So, I mean, I've sanded maybe 20, 30 seconds on either side. And look, it's gone.
Yeah, what grit sandpaper are you using?
This is 320.
Thank you.
There we are. And that's all the sanding I need. And there is our first chicken egg. The diameter is 42.5 millimeter. And the length is, 62 millimeter, the exact size of a large hen egg. Okay. Now we'll do one with the skew and we'll tie dye it. We'll play with some color. Okay. Any questions so far about that with the spindle gouge? Now, when I use the spindle gouge, I'll show you what I was doing to maneuver the tool. So I was always in a bevel rubbing cut. At the top edge, my flute is open. As I come around that edge, my flute goes around the curve till I am relatively closed, okay? And that maintains a bevel rubbing slicing cut, gives me a good finish off the tool, minimal sanding. And by going like this, I am cutting with the bottom wing, so the wood is coming down and across that tool, giving me a skew cut and a nice finish off the tool. You don't want to cut with the top edge because when we get to that end grain, it's going to go wham and give you a nice violent catch in that end grain. Okay. So that's how I was using my spindle gouge, to that edge and to this edge. Now we'll do it with the ever so dreaded skew. Okay. So I've already found my centers. I've mounted it on the lathe. I've marked it with the pinhole from an awl, after all. Set up my tool rest, turn the piece of wood, plunge my quill, cone against the end grain, good drive, keeps it on the lathe, not flying through the air. Now I showed the roughing on this camera last time, so I'll do the roughing on this camera this time. Now, the faster you go, the more scallops you're going to get. The slower you go, the nicer, smoother finish you're going to have on that cylinder. Don't use your fingers. Take those skis, lie it right on top. It's like a nice downhill slalom, so we know it's round. Okay. Take my calipers and my my parting tool. Go in, relief cut. So I'm not bound in that wood. I'm holding this behind. And I am exactly at my diameter. So I don't need to go any further. Good eye. I guess I've made a few. All right. So now we bring our roughing gouge again. I have it angled this way, so I don't kiss that corner on that end grain. I come down proud just above the surface, because I'm going to blend the full surface once I come across and remove this side. Now I can come right across. There we are. And I have my diameter of my egg. I mark a 1/2 inch on either side with my pencil. Here we are. Here's 1/2 inch. Here's 1/2 inch. You can shut down and double check if you like. So here we'll go, yep, 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch. Okay. Move my tool rest closer. Remove the scrap material here with my parting tool. There we are. Now I have my length of my egg. I mark my 1/3, 2/3. I'm a hair to the left. I'll come over a hair to the right. You can see I have my 1/3, 2/3. And now we use our skew. Now all my cuts have been with my tool rest below center, cutting at center. With my skew, I need to change the position of my tool rest. So my tool rest is above center and I'm cutting at 11 o'clock. So if this part of the cylinder was a clock and this was 12 o'clock, okay? When I am planing across the timber, I am cutting at that 11 o'clock position, okay? The first thing is I come around on this edge to create the bottom edge of the egg. Now, when I use a skew, I'm cutting with the bottom third. So if I'm coming from this direction, I'm cutting with the bottom third. If I'm cutting in this direction, I'm cutting with the bottom third on the other side. I ride my skew on one of these corners, and that is my pivot as I come up and around those corners, okay? When you get a skew, these edges will be sharp. You can see almost like a double bevel. I have sanded this off on my belt sander, so in case I get a skate away or a catch, it doesn't nick and damage my tool rest, okay? And I've done that on all 4 corners because it's the same. The bottom angle is your heel, the top point is your toe. So you can make those cuts with the toe. It's just more conventionally done with the heel. Unless it is a small radius in your final cut, you need to be able to see over that heel to see what the tip of the tool is doing. And you can't necessarily do that if I'm making that cut with the heel and coming up and around that corner, because I can't see over top of the toe because it's the highest side of the tool, okay? So when I do the final cuts to remove that to a 16th, you'll see I will switch and make those final cuts with my toe rather than my heel. And even though I'm using the toe, I'm still cutting with that bottom third, okay? Never coming past the halfway point, because it will skate away, give you that beautiful spiral design we all love to hate, and a catch. Okay. So here I'm coming around this corner, working my way back to that edge, pivoting
Kade, can you switch camera?
on that corner.
Kade, can you switch your camera view? Kade, can you switch your to the overhead camera?
There we are. And I'll show that cut on this camera with the skew. I'm starting here, bottom third. I'm coming up and around that corner. And stop right there, okay, for the bottom curve of my egg. Now I will show some of these cuts on this camera, then I will switch and do the same, show you the overhead. Now this way you'll be able to see where my tool is riding and that I'm staying on that bottom third. Okay, so I start by just removing some of this bulk material, working back, making my taper, and then I start to make my curve. Here we are, okay? I have a little bit of a hill here, or a bloop, technical term. So I need to do one more pass. Now you don't have to go fast. You can go slow, calm, and collected and controlled. Okay, there we are. Now we'll show this again on this camera because I just need to take that high side out here, up and around that curve, and there we are, okay? I can blend the high side just to take out that mark. There we are. And I'll shut down the lathe. We can see the finish off the tool. So I have very minimal sanding. I could start at 320 if I wanted, or 240. I'm actually out of 240. I only have a few on this here. And 320. There we are. And there's the finish. That's all the sanding I need. And there's the finish of our egg. Now again, I just need to reduce these to a pin I'm comfortable going to. Yeah. As you progress, you want to do less sanding. More time, more fun turning than sanding. So now I just need to remove these, blend that curve, and I have my eggs, or my egg. So now I'm going to come down. Now my tool rest is much too high for that diameter. So when I am cutting, I'm actually cutting at 12 o'clock. So I need to lower my tool rest to cut at that diameter. Now I am at at 11 o'clock. Now I'm using my toe because I can get a much tighter taper with the toe than I can with the heel. If I do it with the heel, the toe gets in the way, catches the high point, catch, and it could hit your live center. Okay. Now I come around here, start removing this material, and I'm using my toe so I can see over top of my heel. There we are. Do some more of this. Come here. Up and around this curve. Over here. Okay. Reduce this a little bit more. Now that happened because I caught the edge and it jumped back on me. There we are. Now, before I go any further, I would just touch that lightly. Hand on the back side of my tool rest so I don't get caught in between. There we are. That's done. Now we're reduced to the diameter of the pin I'm comfortable going to. I'm down to a 1/16. And I will make a small little cut there, which will break above that, leaving that pin proud and not below the surface of the tip of my egg. Come across here. There we are, down around this edge. Blend that. Yeah, just check my camera, make sure I'm keeping my big head out of the way. There we are. And that's good. Now I want to leave those on there for now because we need to color it. Okay. We need to tie-dye it, so to speak. And why not lathe to be your third hand rather than having dye all over your hands? Now, I have many colors here to choose from. If you want, we can take a democratic vote, or I can do one similar to the one I did today, which is purple, blue, red, and yellow. So the green was overlap of the yellow and blue. And so I can do that. Sounds good. All right. Now, whenever you do some sort of dye like this, you always start with the dark color first. So how do I create the irregular dye pattern? is I use a shopping bag. I take a shopping bag, I rip off a corner, I create a small little pad just like so, and then I take my color and I dip that in the color, okay? So we'll start with, I have some here that I used earlier. So here is my purple, my yellow, my red, and my blue. Now you can use newspaper as well, but a lot more of the dye will be absorbed into the newspaper, wasting dye. So I use the bag. Also, as this dries, it stays wet on the bag longer than it would in newspaper. So after I'm done, I take this off, I part through the little nibs, and I still have color on the bags. So once I sand that, I just touch up and I tie dye the top and the bottom where I blended the nib off, okay? If you use newspaper, it would be dry by then. So here, I'll get my, let me see, purple. And you can use any color combination, but something that is a good idea is look at the primary color wheel and what colors go well with other colors. It'll make it look that much better. Okay. So I use chestnut spirit stains. Okay. You can use water-based, you can use mica dye colors, you could use any color you can find. I don't tend to mix colors because I want the same color and the same saturation every time I use that color. You can mix colors, but if you have a problem and you have to mix up more colors, that tint of purple might be slightly off from one to the other. Might not be a problem. It might be a problem to you because, of course, we're our own worst critics, but no one else in the general public will know any different, okay? So don't beat yourself up about that either. Okay. So here's my purple. I scrunch this into a pad. Now, if you want, you can wear gloves, you can wear a face shield. It's totally up to you. We're responsible for our own safety. I am very careful that I don't get colors and dyes on my fingers, so I don't wear a glove. All this is from the tannins in the oak and the ash that are coloring my hand black, okay? So I also have a piece of wood here that I put on my lathe because I like my stainless steel bedways staying stainless steel. I don't want it to look like Joseph's amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. So I just take this and I put some of this on the surface here. There we are. And I just dab this on as I turn the egg around on the piece, creating an irregular pattern. Do light dabs because we only have a 1/16 of an inch of wood holding that on there. And we do it pretty irregularly, leaving space for the other colors to go over top. So that is my purple, okay? Now I set this aside to dry because I'll probably need it to touch up the ends. It won't be dry by the time I get there. One thing you want to do is put the cap back on this, because if you knock it off your lathe, you're going to have a multicolored lathe, multicolored shoes, multicolored pants, and it'll probably go through and dye your legs and skin as well. We can see this one is a little colored. I did that exact thing. I left it open on my bedway. I went to grab it to close it. I bumbled it. It fell on the floor, but I caught it and my hands were coated in red. So I ran upstairs to wash my hands and my wife almost had a heart attack thinking it was blood. So that's why there's far less dye in this container than any of my others. So I said earlier, you go from the darkest to the lightest. I started with my purple. Now I'm going to do a baby blue. There we are. Don't put it on that teeter-totter. That'll be on your feet in no time. Here again, I randomly apply the blue. Yeah, that's pretty good. Maybe a little bit here. Yeah, and right there. Okay, that's my blue. And I close this, put the cap back on, and I grab my red. Now you can see the caps are still in here. That is just in case they do fall off my lathe. Or I bumble it and it falls. I'm not coated in the full can. I took a knife and I created a small split in here so I can get enough dye through there without emptying the can if it falls. Okay. Here's my red. And to make that into a nice little pad, irregular high points. There we are. There we are. There's my red. And again, I go with my red here, overlapping some of the colors to change some of the blue to purple, some of the purple to black. There we are. There's my red. Just a light touch right there. And if I see I don't have enough purple, I can grab my purple one again here. And I can darken this purple up a little bit here. A little bit there. A little bit up here. There we are. Because it doesn't dry excessively fast on the plastic. But if it's newspaper, you wasted a lot more dye than you needed to. Now my final color is yellow. And even though I did this one with the same colors, you can see I did leave some white spots with the natural wood to come through. Makes it a little lighter, more depth, more color contrast, and it actually highlights all the colors around it. If you totally saturate it, it can get muddy, okay? And if you shine that up, it's really going to amplify that color. There we are, nice and irregular. little bit more color here. And I think that's pretty good, leaving some of the white spots to come through. Okay. Any color you get on your hands, just wipe on your pants. Your wife will love it. It's not a problem because I do the laundry here. So that's like my rag, my jeans. All right, so now I'm ready to take this off. And on this one, I will show you the little sanding disc I use if I did these in a production manner. I take a little, this was a scrap piece of wood I had on the lathe. It's already chucked up, has the chucking points. I just glue a piece of sandpaper on the edge, and that's my sanding disc. I mean, why not use the power of the lathe if you can? You can make them, you can mark the edges. Here's another one here. Here's another one here and another one here. So you can have them in many different sizes to sand many different different things, or bases of bowls or boxes or tips of eggs or spurtles or whatever you're making. Okay? If they're perfectly square, you can leave it perfectly square because I have my chucking points. Okay. When this wears out, I just super glue a new piece to the top. Okay. A lot of these are like ends of boxes or ends of urns or something, and I already have the chucking point. So why not use it in a sanding disc of sorts? Okay. And if that's what happens, that means you had a really good bite by the spur drive and it wouldn't have come off or flying through the air unless I got a catch at this point with those tiny little pins holding it together. And there's that. Here's this one. And I have my pin severed above the surface. Just stop that quickly. Knock this out. Hold on to it so it doesn't damage your lathe or bedway or your piece that you nicely sit on your bedway. I hold this stationary and I turn the back wheel for the threads to find my chuck jaw. That way I do not ruin the threads of my lathe or my chuck adapter. Okay. And it's a really good way to do it this way and have those pins proud, because if you go too thin and you get a catch, that pin will sever below the surface. And you will have something like, I think I have one here somewhere. Yeah, so this one, I was turning, I went a little too thin on the top. It broke off. I had the pin on the bottom and you see the pin breaks below the surface. So in that case, it would be a pain in the butt because I would have to sand the rest of the surface below that pin. Now I brought these into my club to show them and talk about Easter eggs and similar to what we're doing today. And they asked, would you repair that? Would you fix that? I said, well, not really. If the amount of time it would take me to fix that, repair it, fill it, epoxy it, whatever, you can only sell these for so much and I've already put my time into it. The only one that's going to notice that is another wood turner, not the general public. Okay. Also with that there, I thought it's not a big deal because I can take this one and sell it with a pedestal. Okay. So now when it sits on that pedestal and you see this overall piece, you never see that pin anyway. Okay. So there's different ways, different things you can do to mask it or hide it. So it's not really an issue. The only people that would nitpick about it would be your wood turning buddies. Okay. So, so it's definitely better to go a little thicker than that you're comfortable with, and then have those pins proud so we can sand back to the surface so we don't have an indent or a dent in the top or the bottom of the egg. So we'll use this guy here. And that's my sanding disc. Okay. I just take this, sand that nub off close to the surface. I don't want to do too much because I don't want a flat surface on top of my egg. So we can see it is still very slightly proud. Yeah. And it goes very quickly. So this would be a quicker way of doing it, just like the carving method or the skew method that Matt mentioned. Okay. And then I just take out my sandpaper again and I sand with the grain, cross the grain, with the grain, cross the grain, with the grain, slightly cupped to follow the contour. And there is the bottom of my egg. Okay. I would do the same to the top. I'm not worried about the color because I'm still going to do a couple dabs on the top to tie dye the point where I had my holding method. Okay. There we have our top. Okay. Very relatively quick. Okay. So now I take my dies again. I'll take this out so I don't nick my hand on the edge of this because it is hardened by my CA glue. So that would be like a serrated steak knife if I kiss my arm or hand against that as that's spinning. So here I'll take some purple, some red. I'm gonna grab my little bedway diaper. I've heard it's been referred to. There we are. And I take this. I do a dab of purple. There we are. Take this side. I do a dab of purple. Oh, there I got a little bit on my hand, but that's okay. Makes me show that I did something today. Some red there. A little touch of red. And then here's my yellow. Okay. There we are. Yellow. And there we have our tie-dyed egg or Easter egg. And you can do many different types of color combinations to make them fun. And then the other one I turned was this one here. So one with the skew, one with the spindle gouge. There we are. Any questions?
Kate, I've got a question
great.
for you. You put that color on and that's I believe that's an alcohol-based dye, isn't it?
Pardon? Say that again. I just took my earplugs out.
Isn't that an alcohol-based dye?
Yes, chestnut spirit stains are a alcohol-based dye. So it's denatured alcohol-based dye. Yes.
Right.
So
Do you
evaporates
seal those
quickly.
colors in any way?
Pardon?
Do you seal the color in any way?
Yes, I would. Once the colors are dry, I would at least do 1 coat of tung oil, maybe
Okay.
2 or 3. But I don't necessarily, I might do a handful of them that are like shiny and glass finished like. If they're in a pedestal, because I can sell them for a bit more than just an egg on its own. But if it's just an egg in a basket that people buy to make a centerpiece out of, or a worry stone, or a worry egg, or an egg for a kid, they're usually just 1 coat of tung oil just to seal the wood, because you can only put so much time into it from what you can get out of it before
Exactly.
you're
Thank you.
losing money. Yes.
Right. Thanks.
Oh, you can't even.
And I
If you
only
don't
have
mind my asking, what do you charge for them?
egg on its own that's not colored, $5 each. If it's an egg on its own that's tie-dyed or colored, $8 to $10 each. And if it's an egg with a pedestal, 20, 25, 20, depending on the woods, or
Thank you.
if it's tie-dyed or it's colored. And I mean, if I'm not talking about it, each egg takes me about a minute to turn, or a minute and 20 seconds or so to turn. So it's fairly good money for the amount of time you put into it. And that, I find that's what the demographic or the market allows. I mean, the market in your area of the world, or your province, or your country, or your state might only allow $4 an egg, or $15 with an egg and a pedestal. But it also, I find quality, or the finish, or the sanding will also add value as well. So there's a lot of factors that can change the pricing from country to state to province to, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's roughly around what I sell them for.
You're talking Canadian dollars, right, Kade?
Yes, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, at that price, they sell like hotcakes. So
I bet they do.
so, and I can whip them off. If they took me an hour each, I mean, I'd have to charge $30 each. You know what I mean? But since I can do one in a minute and a half or a minute, if they're tie-dyed, it's about 2 minutes or 3 minutes to go through all those steps. $5 pretty good, because then you make, I don't know, you can make probably at least 40 in an hour.
Very nice demonstration, sir. Very, very nice.
Very good.
A lot of things we take from what you just shown us and put it on other projects also, because we know the rule book, there are no rules. So thank you so much, Kade.
Thank you very much.
That was
Kade,
good. Kid. Really was. Thank you.